But I think more and more people are starting to realise that they're used to Office, well, they're used to Microsoft Office, they're used to all the quirks that go with that. They might think they need the compatibility, which in some cases they do, because that's what's expected, that they need to send their stuff in doc when they're working at school or at their office or something like that, or send it on a CV or something like that. But invariably, a lot of people must realise now that they hardly use any features. Sure, there's a lot of features in Microsoft Office, but beyond bold, italic, underline, center, left, justify, that type of thing, beyond that, really, not many people use much beyond that. So, the idea of paying 200 or 300 quid for an Office suite just to do that, no, I think a lot of people will still use Microsoft Office, but they won't buy it.
I think Gordon's echoed exactly my view. I've said for a long time my usage, and I can't see that being very unique compared to any other user, is bold, underline, italics, bit of justification, indentation, and even that I'm finding myself now being able to get away with a text editor as everybody moves towards more paperless Office. Certainly in my office, it's rather frowned upon when you actually physically get to the point of printing things out. I think this need for Microsoft Office and expensive applications is going to get less and less. I've always asked the questions, what does Microsoft Office offer the average user? Everything that I could possibly want to do is offered in even just a basic text editor, Abbey Words, LibreOffice. There's so many alternatives out there, and they're not different from Microsoft Office in the way that it would be alien to a new user. I've deployed a lot of Linux systems over the years. I think my running total is about 53, 54 now, and every time I put Abbey Word or OpenOffice onto a system, there's never been any questions about how to use it. It's a pretty generic method of having an Office suite. So I just can't see why people would intentionally go out and buy these expensive Office suites now.
I think ability is one of the most desired perceptual type of things. People tend to believe that to get to work with documents, you have to have Office, especially if the other people use Office. And as long as they're given the impression that with OpenOffice things just don't work, and some journalists do try to push this impression, they will not even try to explore something else and to try and see how it works. Speaking for myself, I kind of agree with you. There was a time when computers were developing very, very fast in terms of what they were doing with the processors, and not necessarily that we actually slowed down a lot. But what people used to find is that they could move from very kind of antiquated games to something very advanced, like 3D game. And also with processors, they could do more and make it look more visually appealing. And now it's a bit, as we move to mobile devices and smaller screens, people find that sometimes less is more. And personally speaking for myself, I always try to use a text editor because then I can pass to a PDA a lot more easily. And only if I need something richer, usually I would use something like LaTeX or a front end to LaTeX and then produce something like a PDF instead of that. I never want to run something that takes half a gigabyte of RAM just to write a document or so. I never need.
And looking sort of from the average user point of view as well, whenever I send any sort of text to anybody I'm in contact with online, the thought of sending a document attachment or any sort of attachment is pretty much unheard of now. I find if I've got some text that I want to send to somebody, an email will suffice and it'll be pasted into the email. I can't see the mainstream user being very different from that. I'm sure there are people who work from home and maybe need the Microsoft doc format at the present time, maybe to be compatible with work. But speaking
viruses as well. And one of the things that I don't know if you know that, some mails obviously will be lost because the mail filters try to find attachments, but some of them will, as a matter of principle, will reject anything with an attachment of any sort. There are some accounts like that actually do that. As a matter of, they ask you please send without an attachment or put the attachment inside the message body, because that makes it safer, it makes it easier, it makes it lighter, and so on. So.
But I think times are changing now. I don't think Microsoft Office will remain the cash cow that it once has, and I certainly think that if Microsoft is dependent on its Office suite in order to sustain itself with the size it's become, I think they're now bound for trouble, because there are so many viable alternatives which, in my view, do just as good job for the end user and for free of charge or for very low cost. If we move on to...
Right.
Sorry,
I was going to say, apologies for interrupting. For the last 10 minutes or so, I've not been able to hear a word. I can hear you two talking, but it's very, very garbled, so I have no idea what I'm interrupting. I'm just going to quickly say we're going to have to ride this out and just... But one thing that I don't know if either of you mentioned, I'll need to listen to it back, is one of the things that Microsoft have got going for it as far as keeping people using Microsoft Office is the format lock-in. As soon as other products are, if the file format that people expect to use changes and that it's all fully compatible and whatever with other formats, Microsoft Office is dead. It's absolutely dead. That's the one thing they have going for it, is when employers say, oh, you've got to send in .doc, we only accept .doc. When schools say you can only submit your homework in .doc, and if you try to do your homework or your Office report or whatever it is in OpenOffice Writer or in K Word, whatever they've changed that name to, or Abbey Word or whatever, and it does it, but it doesn't quite do it fully properly, because of the way that Microsoft have not quite documented some part of the .doc specification or something, then that's the final hurdle, essentially. And as soon as that happens, Microsoft Office is dead. But the thing is, they've kind of let the cat out of the bag with that, because they tell you, one of the arguments, they say, well, if you're on, say, Office 97 years ago, and they say, right, okay, you want to upgrade to Office 2000 or Office 2003 or XP or whatever, they tell you that everything will be compatible. You don't have to think about compatibility, and that's bullshit, because if you open, say, an older, like an Office 2000 file, a Word 2000 file, in say, Office XP, the first thing it does is, even if you don't change anything and you go to close it, it says, there's changes been made, do you want to save it? And what it's done is actually converted it in the background to Office XP. So that even if you think, well, I didn't change that, or did I? No, it's saying I changed it. Right, okay, I better just save it, just in case I changed it and I can't remember. Right, I'll save it. And then you send it back to someone that's got Office 2000, and they can't open it, because there's some change in the specification that only XP has. You know, so they've already let the cat out of the bag with that. They've already got people saying, when I create a document, I cannot leave it on the standard Office 2010 or Office 2007. I better save it in the XP / 2003 format, even although they all say .doc. I better save it in the 2003 and XP format, because that's the most widely used. If I'm sending it to another company, that's what they're likely to have. If I'm sending it to a government office, that's what they're likely to have. So they've already let the cat out of the bag. That even despite calling it .doc, that it's not .doc. They've already let the cat out of the bag. So as soon as the format shifts and it becomes the norm for ODF or whatever, then Microsoft Office is screwed, because that's the only thing it has got going for it, other than the familiarity. And no one is going to pay $200, $300 just for familiarity.
Is this for familiarity between 2007 or after? Because one of the things I find, and I see myself with people, they get kind of upset by the changes in the interface, and usually they might find OpenOffice to be more familiar than using Office 2007 if they use the prior versions without the ribbons.
Yeah, I mean, just in case Gordon didn't hear that, because we're still having a few issues with the audio. The ribbon was one of the things that I failed to see what the fuss was about. It seemed to me, and and hopefully, Roy, you might be able to correct me here, but the ribbon was brought out as if it was some sort of new great feature, when really all it did is reorganise a few things and upset a lot of people, and was a reason for Microsoft.
I think we
Sorry?
had this discussion before. One of the purposes, and this was actually confirmed. Well, that's something I said many years ago. I said that try to put fresh path